Hello and welcome to this screencast. This is where I will be looking at an evaluation style question from the issues in mental health section of component 3 OCR A-level psychology. This is the question here. Discuss to what extent are explanations of mental illness deterministic. Okay. That is actually quite a challenging question in lots of ways, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first of all interpret the question for you, and then we'll certainly go through one of the paragraphs here just to show you how a question like this, the answer is put together. Okay, right, well let's make sense of this question first of all. You'll notice here that I have highlighted three parts of this question: the discuss, the explanations of mental illness, and the word determinism or deterministic here. Okay, so these are, it's a bit annoying. These are, discuss is inviting us to evaluate, but evaluate what? It's inviting us to evaluate determinism. Okay, not just determinism in and of itself, but determinism within the context of explanations of mental illness. So you have evaluation as your command term, you have determinism as your kind of like the key term that you're working with here, and you have explanations of mental illness as your context. Okay, now bear in mind, guys, please, that component 2, component 3, they all have evaluation questions, lots of different types of evaluation question, if you will. However, they are all answered in the same way. All right, it's the same style of answering is what you're going to have right through. Hopefully, when we kind of go through this, you'll understand that a little bit more, and you'll realize that you can apply this particular answering style to any question that starts with the command term discuss. Okay, let's get a little bit of interpretation into this then. Let's turn this OCR language into plain English language. Here's our interpretation. Are explanations of mental illness very deterministic or a bit deterministic? Okay, and if so, why? In each case, why are they highly deterministic? Why are they only a bit deterministic? So you need to kind of come up with reasons why. So that might invite you to come up with particular explanations for mental illness that you have come across. You've done the behaviorists, you've done psychodynamic, you've done biological, all the different types of biological explanations. What else have I missed? I don't know, humanistic, perhaps. Okay, so you've done all those different types of explanations for mental illness. Your job is the very first thing you need to do is to decide whether the explanation that you are giving is either highly deterministic to a large extent, or is it deterministic to a lesser extent? Okay, a bit. All right. Now, it's not just enough to say the behaviorist explanation of mental illness is deterministic to a large extent. You have to say why. Okay, that's that bit there. So what is it that makes it deterministic? Now, so far, we haven't done any evaluation. This is the bit here. This bit here, which I'm highlighting, highlight there. Okay, this bit here is the most important point. You have to say whether an explanation of mental illness that is highly deterministic or one that is deterministic to a lesser extent, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing, right? And the way we do that is by linking evaluative terms. Okay, evaluative terms, things like reductionism or usefulness or validity, reliability, maybe, things like that. Okay, things that are going to evaluate it. Let me just show you an example then about how to go through this. Just before we go any further, whenever you get a question like this, you always start off with a quick definition of the actual key term that you're talking about here. In this case, it's determinism. So you can read that at your leisure. Right, let's get on to the nuts and bolts of this particular question. This sort of question can be answered as a PEC. Sometimes I call that ILAC. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you can get it working. Or it can be done with a counter argument. It's absolutely fine, whichever way you choose to do it, as long as you're getting this bit here right. First of all, this bit is the most important bit. If this isn't right, then the rest of it doesn't work. Okay, Let's just go through this then to start off with. So remember what the question is asking us. Our explanation of mental illness very deterministic or a bit deterministic? So we've now got to decide, first of all, have we got a explanation of mental illness that is very deterministic? Yes, we do. The behaviorist explanation for mental illness is deterministic to a large extent. Okay, well, that's very good. The next bit is why? Well, why then? Well, because it argues that mental illness is due to external factors such as conditioning experiences causing the illness. Right, we've done the first bit. Okay, that was that bit there, wasn't it? Okay. Now we need to add our evaluation. This is going to be a separate sentence. Please don't merge things together. This is a useful explanation as it illustrates cause and effect, right? We are linking usefulness. Now you will notice here that we have three colours. This whole thing here, these two elements, make up our point, okay? I sometimes call that the identify and the link. I and L. It doesn't matter, okay? It's the same thing, that's your point. But you've got to remember that your point contains two parts. The identification part of all, whether you have an explanation that is deterministic or not, and why, yeah. And then you have your linked evaluative term. In this case, we've gone for usefulness. Right, now then, that's not enough, is it? That's good so far, but a full old 10 marker is going to require a lot more than that. So what we now need to do is we need to get an explanation. So that explanation needs to be linked to the idea, in this particular case, of the behaviourist explanation. If I'd done the biological explanation here, which I could have done, then this would all be about the biological explanation. Okay, you get the idea. So in here is all about how behaviourism explains, in this case, phobias, how it's all about classical conditioning, how it's about external factors beyond our control, etc. Okay, information in there which links the idea of determinism with behaviourist explanations. Right, okay, that's all good. Now then, we get onto our comments. This is your comment here, and you will notice in that comment the three colours appear once more. By the way, you can put colours on here if you want to, but it's not as important as that bit, the top bit, and the bottom bit. Okay, this is a strength. Right, so I always start my comments with this is a strength and this is a weakness. It doesn't have to be there. It could be up here. It could be this is a strength because it's a useful explanation. That's absolutely fine. If that was the case, you would simply write this means that here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as this is a strength or this is a weakness, depending on what your particular paragraph, as long as it appears somewhere in your paragraph. Okay, right. Why is it a strength? This is a strength of highly deterministic explanations of mental illness, yeah, as they suggest that there is a simple cause and effect. Cause and effect is the same as determinism. Relationship between stimulus, phobic stimulus, and response, fear and avoidance. That links back to the example. Right, okay, well, that's fine. We're saying it's deterministic. Big deal. We're not evaluating. We need to link it to usefulness. This is a useful explanation, as by identifying cause and effect, it can lead to effective practical applications. Okay, things are useful, aren't they, when they lead to practical applications, cause and effect. We could have gone several different ways here, but usefulness and practical applications linked together. Let's give some examples, such as systematic desensitization, good, which helps people overcome phobias, or which may be debilitating and prevent them from being productive members of society. You can see how we're expanding here. We're not so much filling, we are adding explanation. Yeah, this fulfills the aim of psychology, which is to improve quality of life. That's all fantastic. Yeah, and what I've done here is I've put a little counter argument, which I'll just leave there and you can stop and you can look at it. It's the same sort of idea. It just goes the other way. Right, I will very, very briefly show you the second paragraph just to show you the contrast. I'll just deal with the top bits to show you, just be aware of time. Right, so in a question like this, we'd need at least one other paragraph, probably another one after that. We'll say we're just going to have the two for the start off with. We would have to pick an explanation of mental illness which is less deterministic because we want a balanced answer, do we? The best one to pick here is the cognitive explanation. Well, why? Okay, remember the question asks us, To what extent are explanations deterministic? Are explanations of mental illness very deterministic or a bit? We're saying it's a bit, so we need to say why. Okay. Cognitive explanations are deterministic to a lesser extent, as they suggest that whilst mental illness is a result of internal mental processes, we can have some free will over the thought process that lead to mental illness. Great. Okay, we've identified and we've said why. Now, what do we need to do? Right, we now need to link an evaluative term. The cognitive explanation therefore provides a more holistic and valid explanation for mental illness. Right? All we then need to do, I'll leave that up for you, is to just link. We need to get a good example to start off with. Then we need to link our bits that are in our comments up to our point, up to our I and L. Okay. Right, I'll leave it there. I hope that makes sense to you guys. These sort of questions are difficult, okay, but with practice you can get there. The best thing to do, first of all, though, is to make sure you understand the question, do your plain English kind of explanation for it, and then start with your points, making sure you have those 2 points. Okay, so why is it deterministic? What makes it deterministic? Why is that a deterministic thing? Is this a good or a bad thing?